Navigating the 20s is officially going to launch its website. We have centralized all the resources. Initially, even though we targeted South Africa as our main audience, we've had interest from all over the world, from India, Bangladesh, Germany, Netherlands, in South America, Brazil. Our newsletter, we reached over 5,000 subscribers, and at the moment we have about 43 editions. Our newsletter editor, Reinecke, joining me today.
Rather than staying around in South Africa and doing articles, I went off to South Korea, which was really cool. While I was living in Spain, obviously the pandemic happened.
In terms of topics that are coming, we are touching on new topics such as navigating love in your 20s. Is Tinder, Bumble still the answer to finding love? We're introducing Navigating Life, the app, which is going to be a mentorship app. We're hoping to recruit some mentors. So if that is you and you're looking to mentor people who are currently navigating their 20s, don't forget to sign up on our website. We really want to grow this community and we want to have impact. Hi guys, welcome to Navigating the 20s. You are with me, Zinhle, and today we've officially made it to episode 10 of season 1. What a journey it's been. We've walked this journey together since the 1st of September. Today's episode just aims to highlight the journey that we've walked. I'm going to take a walk down memory lane in terms of the lessons that I have accumulated from the guests that we invited in season 1. But before I start with that, I want to share my own personal journey with you guys in terms of how I've been navigating the last decade of my 20s. And I'm sure a question that comes up when I say my last decade of my 20s is what happens to navigating the 20s next year when I turn 30? Well, we'll be navigating the 20s and the 30s. So I'm looking forward to starting and embarking that chapter with you guys next year. Next year, Navigating the 20s turns 30. So we're not only just navigating the 20s, we're also navigating the 30s. But in terms of my own personal journey, as many of you would know, I started this podcast in search of a lot of questions and answers that I was dealing with in my own personal journey. I started this podcast after leaving corporate, having many questions about what's next, what would happen in my career, how would I find meaning and passion again outside of law. These are the questions that I had, and I selfishly went in search of the answers by inviting several guests on the podcast to answer some of these questions. So the first theme I guess I was navigating is that career transition. And I know from communicating with a lot of you out there, I'm not the only one who's either had to change career paths or was questioning whether am I really in the right career program. So we have navigated that path together, whether it was through the newsletter, where we invited several co-authors to come and write about their journeys and how they've navigated their careers. The second path that I had to navigate in my 20s was how to embrace being a digital nomad within South Africa for the past 5 months. The question of what is home? Is home a place? Is home where your community lies? And I think that was for me the most challenging one. But as I've come to learn, even from the podcast guests that I interviewed, that you can form a community outside of family, and that for me now, what home looks like is access to nature, hiking, and having access to running and fitness communities, and of course, friends and family. And so the last theme that I had to navigate now in my last decade is finding my ikigai, which is my reason for being. And even though I was in search of this, looking for a bigger purpose, I think I came to find this through the podcast, the ability to use my skills to public speak for a better cause, which is to share knowledge. Because this podcast for me is not just about bringing entertainment, it's also about educating. We are an edutainment podcast. And so for once, I feel that I found a part of my ikigai. I think there's several ikigais that a person has, but this is definitely one of them. So the question I often get asked by a lot of people who listen to the podcast is, after interviewing all the 9 guests that we've interviewed from season 1, are there any themes that stand out? And I'd like to actually share some of these themes with you. So a theme that was very clear, which was actually really funny because when I interviewed my guests, they didn't know I was transitioning in my career. So this was a selfish question, but I went in search of the question of whether if you studied something, does that necessarily mean you should stick to that career path? How many other people in their 20s found that what they were studying or what they had studied was not necessarily what they wanted to do in life? And what I'm reminded by is my conversation with Lorna, who actually was in search of becoming a lawyer. And unfortunately, she didn't have the finances to complete her degree, but ended up becoming an entrepreneur. I'm reminded about Ruan Potgieter, who actually studied all the way up to a master's in architecture and now is the 2023 winner of Alfred Egypt. So what an amazing trajectory to be able to do that transition. All these guests highlighted that they went into a certain career path, a particular field, and then realized by some sort of circumstance, whether it was engaging with somebody who led them to a specific path or being exposed to a community that led them to finding their true passion outside of what they studied. So from that, I got my first answer that it is okay to deviate from what you studied. Often there can be that disconnect between what you think you want to be and what you studied. And so we need to be brave enough to explore and really follow our gut instinct with that. A second theme that came up was actually the theme of the ikigai. In Mahlodi's words, she said in our session, we are called to what we need. And I'm kind of over-interpreting what she said, but when I think about that, even in my own journey, often what we need for ourselves, the things that we need or the way that we need to show up is often translated into how we're going to show up for people. So an example I will give, in our last episode, we interviewed Mpumi Mhlongo, who grew up with a disformity and is a Paralympian. He spoke about how he was bullied as a child for not looking normal. And so his way out, his way of showing up for himself was saying, I'm going to be so fast that no one's going to bully me because I'm going to be known as the fast kid. And that happened to be his ikigai because now he's a Paralympian. And beyond that, he's an academic, currently studying his PhD, allowed him to show up for himself. And when you show up for yourself, there's an intersectionality that comes between what the community needs and how you show up for yourself. And somewhere in between is where your ikigai lies. So whether it was Mpumi Mhlongo or Lorna in her situation where she grew up, in a very, in a society that was facing a lot of violence because Black people didn't have access to resources, and so crime was the answer. And for her getting shot, and there was a need for communities in Cape Town, especially Black communities, to be safer, that intersectionality breeded her ability to become an entrepreneur and form her own ISP. So my challenge for you guys out there listening is to really observe what is happening, what has happened, what has transpired, what have you been exposed to, and how has it led you to your ikigai today. The last theme was around community. So this was a very strong theme with all the guests that really you can't do life alone. And this reminds me from I think Sia must have been our third guest on the podcast, where we were speaking about community, and Sia was talking about, for him, he had the absence of family and really wanted that craving. And he said his clients showed up as family for him. So for him, his clients became community. We spoke about community, the running community of Adidas also showing up as people that we could rely on, or the fitness community in general. And again, that was also shown with Ruan and Josh in the interview. They had a beautiful bromance, if I can put it that way, where they showed up for each other in competitions, and beyond that, they became best friends who propelled each other for the better. So I realized that no matter where you are, where you travel, where you're living, whatever stage of life you're in, community is essential. We cannot do this thing called life alone. And so community is really the tie that ties everything together. It brings your calling, your career, and your ability to succeed in life. So for those of you that are navigating life alone, I want to encourage you to take this year and perhaps the beginning of next year to find your true community, the people that can be there for you and propel you to your ikigai. And another thing I want to talk about is some of the milestones. So this podcast blew me away, and I'm very fortunate that I was working with a team of people that were just as passionate about bringing Navigating the 20s to you. Our first big milestone, and I'm going to be inviting Emma later on to come join us in this discussion, was our newsletter. We reached over 5,000 subscribers, and at the moment we have about 43 editions out. And remember, we started the newsletter in June of 2023. So I just want to thank everyone who's been listening and engaging with our newsletter. It's been a journey, and this is what actually led to us starting the Navigating the 20s newsletter. So I just want to thank all our subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I want to encourage you that this is the moment for you to subscribe. Remember that we are on LinkedIn as well as Substack. That's how you can get access to our newsletter. And then a second milestone was on YouTube. We've officially reached 1,000 subscribers, and my word, what a journey it has been. Because initially, even though we targeted South Africa as our main audience, we've had interest from all over the world, from India, Bangladesh, to parts of Europe such as Germany, Netherlands, as well as in South America. I mean, we have audiences in Brazil. So I want to thank everyone who's been tuning in across the country. We've really walked this journey together, and it's been an amazing experience for us to also get some of the comments that you guys have been putting on our YouTube channel rather. And lastly, even with our podcast, we've now diversified to bring the podcast to you on various streaming platforms, including Amazon. So we've gone beyond just providing the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So I just want to thank our community at large for their continuous support. And I'm sure the question is, what's coming up next year? So as many of you would have seen, Navigating the 20s is officially going to launch its website. As I'm speaking to you, it's probably going to launch in the next 2 weeks or so. So look out for our website. We have centralized all the resources that would be made available to you, from the podcast. If you want to catch some of the highlights of the podcast, our socials, the newsletter, and of course, we're introducing Navigating Life, the app, which is going to be a mentorship app. So you will have seen that by next year, we're hoping to recruit some mentors. So if that is you and you're looking to mentor people who are currently navigating their 20s, don't forget to sign up on our website. Links will be made available. So those are the two interesting things that are coming up. And for those of you that are asking, why Navigating Life, the app? So Navigating Life app aims to be essentially a Tinder for mentors, where it links up people in their 20s that are looking for professionals that can advise them, whether it be that you're struggling to navigate the legal profession, the accounting profession, or just being a freelancer who is providing these services. It's really our hope to assist beyond that. Like I said, the theme for Navigating the 20s is not just to entertain, but it's to educate and to bring resources to our community. We really want to grow this community, and we want to have impact. In terms of next year's content, which I should probably touch on, we are expanding. I'm not going to give any key takeaways, but I really want to delve into topics that are also affecting me. I mean, I'm still a single 29-year-old. So in terms of topics that are coming, we are touching on new topics such as navigating love in your 20s. Is Tinder, Bumble still the answer to finding love? If these are the type of topics that you're interested in, you need to tune in to next year's episodes. We will also obviously be touching on the general elections and a lot of other topics that are relevant for our 20s. But you know what? It is time for me to actually bring Emma on so that we can talk a little bit about Navigating the 20s, the newsletter, which is on LinkedIn and Substack. Guys, I'm so excited. As mentioned earlier, I've got our newsletter editor, Emma Reinecke, joining me today. Usually we have a podcast guest, but for today's session, I've invited Emma to come along because she's actually walked this journey with me straight from the beginning. And I met Emma. Emma, how did we meet again? We met at the Norton Rose Labs at UCT, right?
Yes, we did. We were both in the same degree stream in law.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think we were up late doing an all-nighter.
Yes.
Possibly.
We spent half our lives doing like all-nighters in that lab. How awful. I mean now it's good because it connected us, but we didn't have much of a social life.
No.
Yeah. And Emma, if I could ask you, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. A lot of people may have seen your name at the end of our newsletter as editor, but like just a little brief introduction into who's Emma, what have you been up to? You're also in your 20s, also in your last decade of the 20s, so it's a very exciting chapter.
Okay, well, as you said, we both studied law at UCT. Before that, I did a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature and Law.
Yeah.
English is one of my big loves in life. Post my law degree, I wanted to experience life, have a bit of an adventure, experience other cultures, get lost in a foreign country.
Yeah.
Rather than staying around in South Africa and doing articles, I went off to South Korea, which was really cool. I taught English there in a little city called Gwangju.
Yes.
And then after that, I moved to Dublin, Ireland, where I had a lot of family.
Yes.
And spent a few months living there, just sort of doing odd jobs, waitressing, promotions, things like that.
Yeah.
And then post that, I moved to Spain and I taught English there for a few years.
Yes.
And then while I was living in Spain, obviously the pandemic happened.
What was lockdown like in Spain, if I can just interrupt you there?
Yeah, it was very strict. Spain was hit very hard by the pandemic quite early on. So it was a little bit scary. Yeah, so they were very strict. There were police all over the show. And yeah, if you went to the shops to buy groceries, which was the only thing you could do, you had to keep the receipts in case the police stopped you. And they would stop people all the time. So while I was there, the pandemic happened and I applied to do a master's in environmental law at UCT. And yeah, I started studying my LLM while I lived in Spain.
Yes.
And then when everything came back online, I moved back to South Africa to finish up my master's, which I handed in February.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
When's your graduation?
My graduation's in about 3 weeks.
Oh, hectic.
Yeah, mid-December.
Yeah.
So very excited about that. And since then, I've also obviously joined Navigating the 20s as an editor. And I've also done my practical vocational training.
How's that going? Because that's quite intense as well.
Yeah, it was very intense. And I was teaching as well at the same time. Yeah, so very busy.
You literally sound like a multi-potentialite because you're technically in academia, studying your LLM, you are editing the Navigating the 20s podcast, you're still teaching. And what's the other thing that I'm forgetting? You're doing your vocational training. What's it like balancing all of those things all at once?
It's tough. Yeah, I do have ADHD, so sometimes I struggle to focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just have to be organized, write everything down, try and plan your time carefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Emma, when I reached out to you and I was like, this is what I want to start. I want to start a newsletter, Navigating the 20s. Why did you say yes? So give me an overview of what were your initial thoughts, and since that time when we started in June up to now, what's been your experience of navigating the 20s and the community we're building together?
Well, I was very excited when you reached out to me. I thought it just sounded like such an amazing platform, and I've known you for a long time. And I have a lot of faith in you. So I was really excited for you that you're starting your own business venture. And as somebody who's definitely experienced feeling a little lost in the 20s, trying to navigate I'm sure lots of people who listen and engage can relate. I just felt like the idea was fantastic and definitely very needed. And I love editing. I do it all the time anyway as a teacher. So it's been wonderful reading people's reflections.
And actually, when I approached you, I was like, I don't know, like I know no one else, because from studying with you, used to be editor for Altum Sonata. And even when I needed help, I'm like, I've written something, I'm not sure, Emma, can you help me? And I remember even with Shevening, when I applied for Shevening, Emma was one of the people that I approached, was like, please help me, because I know like when it comes to attention to detail and paying extra care to how things are written, like Emma is one of the best. So like, and also I think having built that trust and walked that journey of completing the LLB with you and still being in touch with you when you were like in Spain, in Korea. And it's also just been beautiful on my side to see your own transition into becoming who you want to be, the woman that you want to be in the future, and the woman that you are now.
Thank you. That's very touching. People have always asked me to edit stuff for them since high school. I just get people asking me to edit things.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe Emma one day is going to start her own like editing company, or she's going to be like editor of a magazine or something. If you don't mind sharing with us, what has been difficult for you to navigate in your own 20s?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really about knowing yourself and what's best for you.
Yeah.
Because for some people, another decision would have been better. But for me, I definitely wanted to travel, see the world. I needed to like scratch that itch.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. Because I remember even when you were initially applying, like everyone was doing like law firm applications to get articles. And then you were like, I'm going to apply for my TOEFL exams and get those out the way. So it's like you always had a strategy, like that's where you wanted to go. And hopefully it gave you the contentment and the pleasure that you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gave me some distance and space to think about what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It was important for me.
Yeah. So I guess for you, I mean, like, navigating that career transition, not to necessarily say like, because this is the route somebody studied LLB should follow, that's necessarily always going to follow in those steps. Sometimes it's okay to like branch out and find yourself and figure out yourself. And I'm sure there's a lot of personal development that took place between the time that you spent in Korea, in Spain, going back to Ireland, and eventually coming back here.
Yes.
Yes, because there's a lot of skills that people don't realize, like to be able to just pick up and then go and settle in the community. I mean, you had to learn some Spanish, right?
Yeah, I can speak Spanish now, which is amazing. That was a life goal of mine as well.
Yeah.
Well, I say I can speak Spanish. It's okay. Traveling to different countries, being able to like pop into different bubbles and societies, engaging with different cultures.
Yeah.
Physically navigating around.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you don't speak the language or when the alphabet is completely different to what you're used to.
And maybe you can advise me on my second challenge. Where's home? Like, how do you navigate that? I'm struggling to answer the question of where home is. And I think we had this conversation the other time when we went out for ice cream, where I was like, I've now officially... for me, home is now like a proximity to nature and finding a fitness community. For you, where's home?
Yeah, I mean, so before I left, I would definitely have said like South Africa is home, and South Africa is still home. But meeting people from different cultures, living in different places, I feel a lot more like a global citizen and like a part of the world, not just a part of one country.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really beautiful way to think about it.
Yeah.
So you can, like you said, home can be anywhere.
That's actually a profound answer. And maybe coming back to your role as editor when it comes to the newsletter, can you talk us through some of the highlights? I mean, we've published about 43 editions and we introduced co-writers, I think a month after launching the newsletters. Are there any stories or articles that stood out for you whilst you were editing?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's pieces are really interesting and you can absolutely take something from what everyone has written.
Yeah.
They're very profound and thoughtful, and it's just great to read about everyone's life advice. I think one of your pieces that stood out to me quite a lot was being a jack of more trades. I think it was one of the first ones.
Yes.
It's clearly a topic that's very close to your heart.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just really interesting to read because I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
And like, personally, I obviously know that you like to do a lot of different things. You're always busy and engaged and doing a million things. But it was really nice to read about your perspective on how that relates to who you are and how doing all of those different things actually is what helps you to thrive and to flourish.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was really insightful about
Thank you.
And inspiring just in general.
Oh, thank you. Weirdly enough, what people don't know, that came from my journal. So I was journaling about it, but I had to obviously tweak it for the newsletter. But it was because I had this back and forth conversation where I was like, why can't people see that I'm a jack of more trades? Like, within corporate, it was just people always used to be like, to do well, you need to narrow down the amount of things that you do. And I would try and do it, and then I'd realize like I'm not flourishing. I feel so like depressed, and I don't feel like myself. And then the minute I would start doing all the things again, as much as it can take a lot, but it actually gives. It's a weird pyramid scheme. It's like it takes energy, but it gives. But it's in a better place than that. So that's the reason why I did it in my second edition, where I was like, let me let other people know. And then other people were like, hey, I didn't know it was called a multi-potentialite. There is a TED talk on it. It's just I can't remember the title. But the lady who gives a TED talk also gives an example of how she's a multi-potentialite. Like she's got different talents in different places, and how like different people, or let's say institutions, need to acknowledge people that are like multi-potentialites.
Absolutely. And because I haven't really been in the corporate space, I've been a teacher, I had not realized like how strong that narrative was, that you need to double down and like specialize and you shouldn't be doing multiple things. So I think it's great that you had the strength inside you to push back against that, and that you're writing about it, and hopefully inspiring other people to be more true to themselves.
Absolutely. And then in terms of the co-writers, do you have any articles there? Sorry to put you on the spot. I know we had several co-writers for this edition, but any ones that stood out that you'd like to share? I mean, they all stood out, but anyone that's top of mind?
Yeah, they're also good. One of the more recent pieces that I've edited, I suppose the ones that I've edited recently are more on my mind.
Yeah.
So it's not out yet, but Snotando's piece is so good. As I knew her at university as well.
Yes.
And I was just so inspired to read about her tenacity and her willingness to like fully 100% commit to her dream.
Yes.
But also pivot and rethink and adjust herself, you know, to her environment and to the things that were going on around her. And I thought that her journey was really inspirational. And I just really admire her determination.
That's amazing. Yeah, Snow is like a game changer in this space. I think what she's doing with the NBA Africa is truly amazing, and it's beautiful to watch her flourish in like the marketing space. So yeah, we'll definitely, we haven't published that at this date, but it's going to be a really good article to read.
Definitely. There's others too. I mean, everybe's written such good pieces.
Yes.
Yeah. Tebogo Boer's piece on building a solid foundation, learning how to work, being 1% better, and, you know, learning your skills and then sort of boxing away the information and the skill sets and then just being able to dip back in and utilize it when you can and just build that foundation. I thought her piece was really great. I love what she said at the end about being motivated on Mondays, tenacious on Tuesdays,
I
whimsical
remember that.
on Wednesdays, thankful on Thursdays, and flamboyant on Fridays.
Yeah, that was a beautiful way of drawing it. Like, Tebogo Boer is also amazing. I'll go way back with the metro, like in primary school. So I went to primary school with her, but she's also, I think, followed the accounting route and now is doing like amazing things within the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation. So all of them are game changers in the space. And Emma, so for our guests that are watching right now, some of them might be returning podcast guests. Some of them are tuning in for the first time and have never really experienced our newsletter. What can they expect in 2024? What are we doing differently next year?
Yeah, so next year for the newsletter, we'll continue publishing every week, but we have a lot more topics and we're going to try and be more relevant to what's going on. So for example, we're going to do some content about elections, I think in the podcast and the newsletter.
Yes. Why is elections so important, especially for people in their 20s?
Oh my goodness. Did you know this? Next year, I think 41% of the world's population is having an election.
Hectic.
So 2024 is election year.
Yeah.
And yeah, true of South Africa too. Who you vote for and who ends up governing has a dramatic impact, I think, on everyone's lives.
Absolutely.
On your life, on the lives of all the people around you. I mean, government makes so many decisions about society, and we also are making those decisions when we vote and decide who to vote for and participate in democracy.
Yes, I love that. I think that we're integrating elections into it because young people constitute a large percentage. We're actually majority of the country. And so if we don't make that mark, like you're saying, to say who should govern over us and who should make the policy decisions, then we can't be complaining. We're unhappy about load shedding and a lot of issues. So we need to take to the polls to create that change that we want.
Absolutely, definitely.
Yeah. And other topics?
Well, a lot of similar topics, I think, in terms of career, dating, things like that. But another topic that we're introducing is Adulting 101.
Yes.
Yeah, basically the life skills that you need to be an adult.
Yes.
Being able to do taxes.
Yeah.
Thinking about, I think, finances, investing, how to
life covers, wills. You're absolutely right. Because no one teaches this to us at high school level or primary school level, right?
Absolutely. And some people don't even know what they don't know and don't know that they should be doing certain things or that it might benefit them.
Yeah.
So yeah, why not have access to that knowledge and that information so you can make an informed decision?
Absolutely. Emma, it's been wonderful having you on the podcast. As you know, it's our closing tradition on this podcast to get the guest to give us 3 pieces of advice in terms of how we can navigate the 20s. So, it doesn't have to be 3, but you can give us 1 or 2 pieces of advice to our community in terms of how they can navigate their 20s.
So my first piece of advice is that knowledge is power, and talking to other people, getting advice from them, getting a mentor, finding out what other people have done is so important so that you can be informed and figure out how you want to do things, either the same or differently. And then my next piece of advice is to sort of march to the beat of your own drum. Once you've collected advice from other people, make sure that you are making your own decisions and doing what's best for you and not just living according to what other people are expecting you to do. And my final piece of advice, as a lot of people have written in and said, don't be afraid to pivot, change your mind, reevaluate. The world is constantly changing and you are constantly changing and growing, and you should embrace that.
So guys, this is the end of episode 10. It's been an amazing year with all of you that have been supporting us and listening to the podcast. From the Navigating the 20s team, we want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a very, very Happy New Year. We're looking forward to celebrating 2024 with you. Be sure to catch us in January as we launch season 2 of Navigating the 20s. But remember, if this podcast has touched you or helped you in any form or manner, be sure to send it to a friend, maybe a family member, or even a colleague. So be sure to follow our pages on social media. We are on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and on LinkedIn. Be sure to follow us on those social media platforms as mentioned. And be sure to look out for our LinkedIn newsletter as well as on Substack. We are looking forward to seeing you in 2024. And from me, Zinhle, keep navigating.